The world of video game consoles is a fascinating one, where the science of engineering, human psychology, and business acumen meet. It is also a ferocious battleground, where the industry giants push against the competition violently, just to secure a handful of new gamers in their ecosystems. The story of the Switch is one akin to the Phoenix of legend, since it brought Nintendo back from the ashes of its latest defeat, the Wii U, and back into the fray in an absolutely remarkable manner. Welcome to Rebel Economics. Today we will talk about the impact of the Switch in the video game landscape and how it has saved Nintendo from one of its darkest times as a retailer. When it comes to analyze the impact that the Switch has had in the video game industry and in Nintendo, it's important to consider the two sources of revenue that derive from the ecosystem generated by the release of a new console: the hardware sales and the software sales. When it comes to hardware sales in the video game industry, it can't always be considered as a source of revenue. Many times across the release of a new console, the parent company has actually incurred in losses, as their products get sold for lower than they cost to produce. An investigation in 2014, after the release of the PS4 by Eurogamer, uncovered that Sony was taking around $60 of loss per unit of PS4 consoles sold to customers. Prior to the release of the new console, Sony had pushed the chief hardware architects to move away from the customized components that operated within the PS3 and more towards the standard x86 architecture. This change in engineering philosophy brought the hardware configuration of the PS4 closer to that of standard home computers, meaning that individual cost of components would be reduced as these were not specialized parts, which allowed Sony to reduce the overall cost of a new hardware substantially. The reason why companies might want to follow this route is that once customers have purchased a PS4, they are disproportionately more likely to purchase a somewhat large amount of games in that system. And it is with that software and its tremendous profit margins that companies will not only recoup the initial loss, but also generate abundant profits. This strategy, called loss leader, also generates a captive audience market, since the customers who buy a PS4 will, by definition, want to buy games for it, since the hardware by itself is rather useless, with the exception of perhaps some free games that can be downloaded. This strategy, however, while common, it is not shared across the industry. While Sony lead with the PS4 and PS3 markets with substantial unit losses, Forbes uncovered that Microsoft would almost break even per Xbox One sold. This is largely caused by the higher price point of their system, which was over $100 more expensive at launch in 2013. But what about the Switch? How does Nintendo dance their hardware loss dance? Well, it would seem that the answer is pretty damn well. A similar study published by Forbes outlined that the standard Switch model cost about $257 for Nintendo to make. And with their selling price at launch being $300, the Japanese game maker was profiting some tidy $40 per unit. This is quite remarkable. Since the loss-leading strategy has worked so well for other companies across the industry, it is interesting to see why Nintendo would not want to reduce their selling price and appear more affordable in the eyes of potential customers. The answer might just be that the liquidity Nintendo receives per sale, they believe, compensate for the potential sales left on the table. I would be surprised though, seeing how most Nintendo games sell at about $60, each Switch sold would already cover those $40 of profit and create a new captive customer with large profit potential. I think their strategy might be more focused on longitudinal sales. What this means is that Nintendo is keeping an ace in the hole for when sales decline in the future, as it is the natural evolution of every console, as they reach their twilight and their tech becomes outdated. Nintendo has the ability to reduce the price of each unit sold, perhaps to the point that they even take losses per unit, to squeeze out the last laggards of the market that still have not purchased one of their systems in 2022. Sony and Microsoft could conceivably do the same, but for them, reducing the price of their hardware will result in even higher unit losses, which makes this strategy less appealing. Lastly, Nintendo has a final trick to play in the hardware market of the Switch. As of 2022, Nintendo has released two Switch-adjacent pieces of hardware, a premium and a lower-cost one. The premium version of the Switch was released in October 2021 with the name of Nintendo Switch OLED. Essentially, this new hardware contained a 7-inch OLED screen and a larger hard drive space, cranking it up from the 32GB of the standard Switch to 64. The Switch OLED version sold for a retail price of $350, so that would be $50 more expensive than the standard hardware. But as an analysis made by Bloomberg revealed that the OLED screen only cost Nintendo $5 more than the standard screen, and that the larger disk drive space only $3.50. This means that a price hike of the OLED Switch version of $50 generates for Nintendo more than $40 extra on top of the $40 per unit sold of the standard Switch, totaling around $80 per premium OLED Switch sold. The low-cost version of Nintendo's latest hardware is the Switch Lite, a handheld exclusive reimagining of the standard Switch. This version cannot be docked and played on the TV, nor does it count with detachable Joy-Con controllers. The price for this hardware is $199, and while the cost price of the Switch Lite is not agreed upon by reporters, what is known from a release in the Wall Street Journal is that Nintendo fought hard to keep the price under $200, making the low-cost system over $100 cheaper than the original. Clearly, this low-cost version would require a compromise in quality of the components and raw power of the system. However, I don't think Nintendo was able to make the Switch Lite a profitable product per unit sold. Even with cheaper, less powerful component, the Switch still has a unique architecture that increases the price of its building blocks. At most, the Switch Lite, I believe, breaks even. At worst, I believe, will be a loss leader for the Japanese game maker. Now, let's consider software sales. By the very nature of video games as endlessly replicable goods once they are created, the potential profit margin per video game once the cost of making it are overtaken is virtually unlimited. The natural evolution of a video game's life cycle tends to be the same as a blockbuster movie but with much longer legs. The week of release of a game from an acclaimed franchise, sales are expected to reach their peak and then slowly taper off until either a successor game from the same franchise is released or the console it operates on becomes antiquated and substituted by the next version. Most video game companies, like Sony, would sell their most popular IP new entries at slightly over or around the $60 mark for the first trimester or so after their release, in both physical and digital versions, and then reduce the price another $15 every trimester or so until a game that is a year old might be around $35 to $40. Then is when promotions start. Having been a Nintendo boy my entire life, and not having had a PlayStation until I purchased a second-hand system in the beginning of 2021, I was blown away by the crazy discount offered by the PS Store. I still remember my disbelief when I got The Last of Us and Horizon Zero Dawn for $19 each. But guess which company does not follow this price strategy? Yep, Nintendo. The Japanese game maker fights against the notion of video games being some goods that ought to lose value as they become older. Nintendo holds their original IPs really close to heart, and believes that reducing the prices of their games in the Nintendo Store just for something as banal as time is not the right way to honor their characters. Zelda Breath of the Wild released in 2017 for $70. Now in 2022, if you go to the official Nintendo Store, you will see it for $70. Nintendo will not debase Link by reducing their price, and nor will they do so with Mario, Kirby, or the Pokemon franchise. I think in the past 3 years I can remember one 10% discount in Super Mario Odyssey to celebrate a Mario Day or something like that. Otherwise, the offers in the Nintendo Store are for third-party games, never core IPs. Obviously, these high prices guarantee tremendous profits all year round for every direct purchase that they make. Keyword being direct. Many players would decide against shelling out $70 in a fantastic yet 5-year-old Zelda game. External retailers, however, do offer Nintendo games at reduced prices. Customers can simply go to Amazon and find the same game provided by Nintendo themselves at $60, with the eventual 10 or 20% discount on Amazon video games. Now, the abusive practices of Amazon to force the retailers on their platform to sell at lower prices than those used at their own stores is another topic that we are creating a video about. So if you're interested, consider subscribing to be on the know for when that video comes out. But regardless of Amazon's bullying, Nintendo is a company that, from their perspective, honors their IPs and squeezes their fan bases dry, while going completely against the majority of the industry. All of this, the risky and clever hardware sales and the pricing strategy for their games, has proved tremendously successful for Nintendo, who in 2021 published a record-breaking revenue of $13.71 billion, of which $8.71 billion were pure profit, all thanks to a little blue and red console that was well thought out, brilliantly executed, and extremely successful. But the battle rages on. Nintendo's far from becoming the industry leader. As of today, the undisputed champion of the console market is still the PlayStation 2, at almost 160 million units sold. And it seems that Sony for now will keep its crown. It is unlikely that the Switch, a console over 5 years old, is gonna cross that 50 million unit gap that separates them, as many analysts believe that the Switch is already in its twilight. The Switch, however, still remains a fantastic case study of successful hardware and software development, a titan of sales that has, to a large degree, resurrected Nintendo from the grave that the Wii U put him in. As an example of what happens when good market research, cross-business unit cooperation, game design philosophy, and a great plan meet sheer dedication and courage of workers in a company never shy to take risks. I don't think of the Switch as my favorite Nintendo console. My heart still belongs to a certain purple cube. But to this day, it is perhaps my favorite example of a product being well thought out and taking its industry by storm. Thanks for watching Rebel Economics. I've been wanting to talk about the Switch for so long, and it is good to have it done here. If you enjoyed this video, leave a comment with some ideas about what we should do next, and consider subscribing. We're a new channel and every single one of you is of tremendous help. I will see you all in the next one.